There is a kind of loss that does not feel like loss because it happened gradually. No dramatic event, no clear before and after. Just a quiet shift where play became responsibility, curiosity became caution, and softness became strength. Some childhoods do not end with a single moment, they dissolve slowly under pressure. And when that happens, you often do not notice it while it is happening. You only recognize it years later, when rest feels unnatural, when vulnerability feels dangerous, when you realize you do not remember what it was like to feel carefree. When a childhood ends too soon, it rarely announces itself. It disguises itself as maturity. You were praised for being calm, for understanding adult problems, for not complaining. Adults told you that you were wise beyond your years. But wisdom developed under pressure is not the same as wisdom developed through exploration. It is adaptation, and adaptation always has a cost. One of the first signs your childhood ended too soon is that you do not remember being carefree. You may remember responsibilities, expectations, emotional tension, but not much about play without guilt. When you look back, your memories feel serious, structured, careful. You were thinking ahead. Monitoring moods, avoiding mistakes. Even as a child, part of you was already managing something. Another sign is that you were often described as the responsible one. You may have taken care of siblings, helped with adult tasks, or acted as the emotional stabilizer in your home. You learned early that your behavior influenced the atmosphere. If you stayed calm, things stayed calm. If you succeeded, it reduced stress. If you were quiet, conflict decreased. You became attuned to emotional shifts. You developed hyper-awareness of tone and tension. That awareness does not disappear. As an adult, you may still scan rooms unconsciously, assessing safety before relaxing. Growing up too soon often creates hyper-independence. You learn to solve problems alone. Asking for help may have felt risky or pointless, so you stopped asking. Now, even when support is available, you hesitate to reach for it. Independence feels safer than reliance, but safety built on isolation eventually feels heavy. You might appear strong to others while internally feeling unsupported. Emotional suppression is another sign. If expressing sadness, anger, or fear once led to dismissal or escalation, you likely learned to contain those emotions. You swallowed tears. You redirected frustration. You became composed. That composure may still define you. You might struggle to cry in front of others. You might feel uncomfortable when someone asks how you truly feel. Your emotional world became private not because it lacked depth, but because it lacked safe outlets. Another sign is difficulty playing or being spontaneous as an adult. Playfulness may feel foreign. You may analyze humor instead of immersing in it. You may struggle with activities that require letting go of control. When childhood ended early, structured thinking replaced experimentation. Responsibility replaced risk. As a result, fun might feel indulgent rather than natural. You might even feel restless when doing nothing productive. Rest triggers guilt because productivity once equaled stability. A premature end to childhood also often results in chronic vigilance. Even in calm environments, your body may not fully relax. You anticipate problems before they occur. You prepare for conversations before they happen. You replay interactions afterward. Your nervous system became accustomed to being on alert. That alertness helped you once, but now it may create exhaustion. You might experience tension headaches, tight shoulders, or shallow breathing without realizing it stems from long-held patterns. Another indicator is feeling older than your peers throughout life. As a child, you may have related more easily to adults. As a teenager, you may have felt disconnected from typical adolescent behavior. Even now, you might feel slightly out of sync in casual environments. You carry an invisible weight that others may not see. That weight comes from early exposure to complexity. There may also be a persistent belief that your value lies in usefulness. If praise once followed responsibility, you may equate worth with contribution. You might feel most secure in relationships when you are helping, fixing, advising. When you are not needed, you may feel uncertain. This belief forms quietly. It shapes career choices, friendships, and romantic dynamics. You become the stable one, the dependable one, but stability without reciprocity creates imbalance. Another subtle sign is difficulty identifying your own desires. When your focus was outward early on, you may not have fully developed inward awareness of preference. Simple questions like what do you enjoy or what do you want can feel surprisingly complex. You're skilled at adapting to others' needs, but less practiced at honoring your own. This can create a quiet sense of drifting through life while functioning well on the surface. Emotional loneliness often accompanies this pattern. Because you were strong early, others may assume you do not need support. You may have internalized that belief yourself. Vulnerability can feel like regression instead of growth. So you remain composed, people rely on you, few see your softer layers. The loneliness is not about being alone, it is about not being fully known. There may also be grief that surfaces unexpectedly. It might appear when you see children being nurtured gently, or when you watch someone else receive unconditional care. You might feel a flicker of sadness that is hard to explain. That sadness is not envy, it is recognition. Recognition that some parts of you had to grow before they were ready. When childhood ends too soon, imagination often narrows. You may have been practical instead of dreamy, realistic instead of curious. While realism is useful, imagination fuels creativity and expansion. Reconnecting with it can feel strange because it was deprioritized early. Another sign is a deep discomfort with conflict. If childhood conflict felt overwhelming or destabilizing, you may avoid it at all costs now. You may overcompromise to maintain harmony. You may apologize quickly even when unnecessary. This conflict avoidance stems from a time when tension felt threatening rather than manageable. You learned that stability depended on minimizing disruption. Perfectionism can also develop. When mistakes once carried heavier consequences, you learned to be careful. Precision became protection. Now, you may hold yourself to standards that exceed what others expect. Small errors feel large. Achievement becomes baseline rather than celebration. This internal pressure is exhausting but familiar. It once kept you safe. Compartmentalization is another common pattern. You learn to separate emotion from function. You could attend school, complete tasks, and perform well regardless of what was happening internally. That skill persists. You may handle crises calmly. Others admire your composure, but afterward, you might feel drained without understanding why. The emotional processing was delayed, not absent. Growing up too soon does not mean you were weak. It means you were adaptive. The strength you developed was real. The awareness you cultivated was necessary, but adaptation that lasts too long becomes rigidity. The goal now is not to discard your maturity, it is to integrate what was postponed. To practice asking for help even when it feels uncomfortable. To rest without earning it, to play without justifying it. To allow emotions to surface without immediate containment. Healing often begins with acknowledgement, saying to yourself that you did what you had to do, that you survived in the only way available, and that you are allowed to evolve beyond survival. Your nervous system can learn safety again. Your body can learn to relax. Your identity can expand to include softness alongside strength. Signs your childhood ended too soon are not sentences. They are signals that parts of you adapted under pressure. And those parts deserve compassion. You were strong because you had to be. Now you are allowed to be strong because you choose to be, not because you are required to be.